Pardon me while I have a strange interlude.
There is nothing else. Life is an obscure hobo bumming a ride on the omnibus of art.
In the misty corridors of time, and in those corridors I see figures, strange figures.
Welcome back, my friends, to the AP Strange Show. I am your host, AP Strange. This is my show, and today's show is brought to you by Disclosure brand Utopian Energy Sources. With Disclosure brand Utopian Energy Sources, you can have all the free energy in the world. We just need that pesky disclosure to happen first. And it's coming soon, and it has been for 70 years, but this time, for real, it's really coming this time. So with that out of the way, I have a wonderful guest on tonight. He is somebody that I've been connected with and had the pleasure of being connected with after following his work for some time. You may know him from the UFO Trail blog that he has maintained for years, or books such as The Grays Have Been Framed or Wayward Sons, or you might know him from his more recent efforts spearheading Expanding Frontiers research with Erica Lukes. My guest tonight is Jack Brewer. Welcome to the show, Jack.
Thank you, AP. I am delighted to be here. Thanks for having me.
Of course, man. Yeah. I've been pretty excited, checking out what you've been up to lately with Expanding Frontiers. It seems like you've been very busy with that. We were saying kind of off before we were recording that there was a magical time on Twitter where a lot of us were all in the same place, and I used to correspond with you and just kind of, follow your stuff more closely. And nowadays we're all cast to the winds, as it were, on social media. But it's nice to check out what you've been up to. And like I said, it seems like you and Erica both have been very busy with a lot of great work. So,
well, thank you. Thanks. I appreciate that. A lot of people avert from public records requests and Freedom of Information Act requests because they are time consuming as far as you wait a lot. There's a lot of waiting involved. And a large part of our work at Expanding Frontiers is Freedom of Information Act requests. But the upside of the wait is when you get involved in a subject and you're looking it over and you see 2 or 3 things you can do a request on, and you submit those, and then tomorrow you're reading something else and you submit a couple more. After doing that for 2 or 3 years, you start getting records in your inbox like every day.
Nice.
And so we're hitting that point where we've got a lot of material to sort through and digest and decide how to present it and how does this relate to that. And it is exciting. It's fun. It's interesting. It's historical research. And I enjoy it a lot.
Yeah. I mean, I've never been one to really, put in those requests. And it's great that you have not only the archive that you're accumulating through your efforts, but you also have resources for people that want to learn how to do it themselves, which I think is great.
We do. Thank you. We operate at expandingfrontiersresearch.org, and there's some different sections of that site that involve a blog and an online archive and a video page of interviews we do and things. And then we also have a Patreon that most of it's public. It really started just to give folks a convenient way to support us on a recurring basis. And my general method of operation is I'll share records first there, just like the raw material. And then over at the blog, I will go into deeper analysis after I've digested it a while, because it just takes a while to, especially when you get into things that are 30, 40, or hundreds of pages. Just, I don't expect to like get every fine point, but I do try to make sure that I'm not missing some key point in it. And over time, you start kind of getting some different tricks of the trade, so to speak, of how to keep track of names and like have searchable Word docs that you can say, hey, have we come across this guy before? Let's, search our files and see if he's come up. And yeah, it gets really interesting to start putting all of the pieces together on how, for instance, one of the things we're deeply involved in now is how FBI investigations, espionage investigations, overlapped into the New York Saucer Information Bureau and different UFO investigators. And I can understand how people would be like, oh, the FBI was snooping around, and oh, they're denying that they're investigating UFOs. But when you really start reading this stuff and digesting it, I don't think they were interested in UFOs.
Yeah, right.
I think they were interested in people that were pretending to be interested in UFOs and stuff like that. Like that's just part of the research and the investigation is figure out why were they investigating this person, and why did this person start hanging out at UFO meetings. And like that's one that has just run to current times too, is you're just like, okay, so here's a guy that we know worked in the Pentagon, worked here, did this, was into psychological warfare. I mean, from NICAP right up to present times, we got CIA assets that would have us believe they just decided to recreationally start hanging out at UFO,
Yeah. And like you say, it's been there from the very beginning. And I found that to be super interesting with some of your recent work. I mean, I guess it makes sense, but there's so much CIA overlap with NICAP, as you wrote about extensively in Wayward Sons, and the intelligence community in general. But and you kind of really outline that well in the book, but in these recent ones, it's more the FBI, and it seems like it's centered more on contactees. Like I was reading Truman Bethroom's FBI file earlier because of something that was on your site. Yeah,
and it's not entirely clear whether the contactee, like Bethroom and Daniel Fry, like if they were knowingly being deceptive, and if they were, for what reason. Was it like on behalf of a foreign government? Was it on behalf of the FBI? Was it just because they were greedy and they saw an opportunity to make a few bucks and get out of being, laborers in California? Like, what was the point then? And all of that's part of the mystery. But yeah, it is really interesting that we'll get a file and there'll be some things in it we didn't expect. Like, you just kind of shrug and go, let's see what's going on with Ivan Sanderson. And then, he like initiated contact with the FBI and told them he wanted to help them out, and that he thought subversive stuff was going on in the UFO community. And so then you take a document like that and you go, okay, here's 4 or 5 other people that he told the FBI they should keep an eye on. So let's submit a request on each of these people and see if the FBI followed up on it. And it just keeps cascading into wider and wider nets. And our latest filled request that I haven't even posted yet is on a woman that called herself, key phrase there, Lois Jessup at the New York Saucer Information Bureau. And she's quite mysterious. And I didn't really see that coming. I knew that she had been an editor, and I knew she had written some woo about, supposedly fringe things that happened in South and Central America and whatnot. But I'm finding that she was an editor at this place that Sanderson alerted the FBI about. And I'm not sure. I don't think that was her real name. I've found some historians that were just interested in her work for other reasons, and they can't figure out for sure where she came from and where she went. And then I came across a work of Ivan Sanderson's that he was literally looking for, like after she had been with the New York group, like where did she go? What's she doing? And I find stuff like that pretty fascinating,
Yeah. She's kind of a
and
ghost
it all
scene.
ties into an investigation of a man named Robert Stark that it's not clear. Like, it's clear that the FBI was investigating him because he was suspected of being a Soviet espionage agent, but it's not entirely clear if they ever charged him or what became of it. And that kind of interests me too, as we keep getting files, and sometimes they just kind of end in a place that doesn't seem like the ending, which kind of makes me think that there might be more that remains classified, like if maybe they flipped somebody and got them working for them, or I don't know. But it's certainly a wider angle point here. Is it certainly casts a lot more on the New York UFO culture of the 50s and 60s than we might get from some of the more credulous or easily satisfied outlets that we might pick up information from.
Yeah. I mean, I find Sanderson's role within this pretty interesting because, as you said, he's kind of offering information up to the FBI and saying, what they're talking about at their saucer group doesn't sound quite right. And I mean, he wasn't an American, right? Wasn't he born in Scotland?
That's correct. And the only reason he was here was he was British intelligence during the war, was what he was doing in New York. So, yeah, it is pretty weird. Something that Erica and I will kind of laugh about when we're exchanging notes and looking at this stuff and talking about it. Again and again, we'll like hit a point where we like, well, I mean, there it is. There's a UFO guy that's an FBI informant. I mean, we got it, right? I mean, are we done? There it is.
Well, he's former SIS and an FBI informant, so.
Yeah, Joseph Bryan with NICAP. I mean, CIA asset. He failed to mention that he was a psychological warfare expert, as he spent a decade on the NICAP board of directors. Yeah, you're just like, and we'll just laugh and like go, well, so I mean, we're done, right? I mean, there you go. And I mean, it's just kind of funny how the skeptic side and the rigid believers alike can always just kind of see a way that something doesn't matter. You know, that like
Yeah.
if you like, you could take that information and show someone that's really vested in supporting the UFO narrative and wanting to believe that NICAP was vested in revealing truth. And they might say something like, well, it would make sense that the CIA would want to know what Kehoe was learning and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can show it to a rigid skeptic and say, well, so he worked for the CIA. That doesn't mean he's not allowed to be curious what UFOs are. Maybe he just, I mean, the former CIA director was on the board for a while, Hill and Coder. I mean, maybe they were just friends and on the board. And like both of them seem naive to me in a way that, like, I'll give you this as an example, AP. I came across some FBI records where a FBI clerk in New Orleans wanted to join NICAP. He thought it was interesting. And so he asked his direct superior, and eventually it ended up the chain to the Washington field office, and the top of the line Hoover, what do we do about people that want to be in NICAP? And Hoover explained why they had reasons that they didn't want to publicly endorse or oppose Kehoe and his rhetoric, and we don't investigate UFOs, we're just staying out of that. And so I bring this up because my point is, if a clerk at an FBI office was told to stay out of that, I really don't think that, like, intelligence officers at the upper levels of agencies like the CIA would be encouraged or even allowed to just moonlight as UFO investigators. Honestly, I find that, like, naive. I mean, like, if you worked for the school board, for crying out loud, and you wanted to be in certain recreational clubs and agencies and stuff, they might discourage that just because of the reputation that comes with it, much less if you were with the CIA,
Right. Do you suppose that might have been that Hoover would have been concerned about stepping on the CIA's toes if they were already involved with it?
I think that's a really good point too. I think he knew a lot more about things than he often let on. He had informants or assets, connections at some of the earliest meetings when the CIA was reaching out for help to academia about Project Bluebird and Artichoke and what became MK Ultra. And we obtained documents, FBI records over the years that show how he had his finger on the pulse of that as it was developing. So, yeah, I think it's real likely that you end up with agencies investigating other agencies and investigating people in their own agencies. And yeah, I think that's a very real part of it. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, because with something like the JFK assassination, if when you're looking into that, it becomes kind of clear that the FBI and the CIA didn't really talk to each other. Yeah. So, what do we know about this Robert Stark character? Because I realize you're just kind of on the trail now, but and I have to admit, when I was reading it earlier, I thought it said Robert Stack for a second, and I was like, no way, like, so the Robert Stack, and then I looked at it more closely and realized I was wrong. But
well, he only came up because Sanderson jumped out there and said, Sanderson jumped out there and told the FBI, along with a New York editor named Hans Sanderson, who was Swedish born, that was attending these New York saucer meetings. They jumped out there in the late 50s and told the New Jersey office of the FBI that they thought subversive stuff was going on. And by that, they meant they pull you in. This should ring a lot of bells too. They pull you in to get scientific information about UFOs and to hear what the latest news is about UFOs. And then when they get you there, they talk about writing your congressman to declassify everything and tell you how horrible the U.S. government is and that, we should all be protesting. And they're like using UFOs as a vehicle to rile up citizens. And so the FBI just kind of made note of that. And then in 1963, they circled back because they were investigating a guy named Robert Stark for possible espionage. And my first understanding of this was I obtained a document responsive to Sanderson that indicated they went back to him because he had indicated that he would be willing to talk to him. And they were like, we think this Stark guy might be connected with this saucer bureau that you told us about. And Sanderson wasn't attending anymore, but he knew some people that were, and he told them to talk to them. And Lois Jessup was one of them he mentioned that I talked about a little bit earlier, that she's a real mysterious character. And interestingly, too, one of the things I'm finding in Stark's files is there were several women in his life, and he would use different aliases and they would use different names. And he rented an apartment for a while with a woman that claimed to be his wife, but they didn't use the name Stark. And when the FBI showed pictures to the landlord of various women they knew he had been associated with, they didn't recognize any of them. So there was yet another one still that was apparently claiming to be his wife at this apartment. And so while the FBI wasn't directly finding anything illegal that he was doing, and at a bare minimum, he was going to a lot of trouble to have different identities in different cities and whatnot, and it wasn't clear why. And of course, something like that would be a major red flag. And but to answer what else we know about him, one of the big things was he claimed to be from Detroit, but he had a European accent, so that was problematic. And he had worked for a Russian immigrant in New York that was very successful in the electronics business and sold a number of companies and retired in good standing. And so they, FBI Cold War paranoia, if you just even knew somebody from Russia, you're halfway, to an espionage charge already. But then in the Bureau's credit, this guy was doing some really weird stuff. And then, like I say, in the middle of it all, he just starts writing UFO articles that he wants Daniel Fry to publish in his newsletter, and hanging out apparently at New York Saucer Information Bureau meetings. And understandably, that's a pretty perplexing file to go, okay. And so sometimes they just follow him, and they like have him walking around downtown and frequently changing directions. And it's interesting reads just to learn about the trade craft. Like they'll see him throw stuff in a garbage can, and they'll circle around and like get the garbage so they can examine what is he, what the hell is this guy doing, lying about who he is, where he's from, what he's doing, what his name is, and hanging out with saucer people. And I'm still working on it. I don't know what they ended up deciding. I have found though that I believe it's our guy died eventually in, I believe it was New Jersey. So I mean, he didn't die in prison, or he didn't, get shot in an alley in a standoff or anything.
Yeah.
So like
Yeah.
I used that obituary I got from newspapers.com in order to find more records on him from the FBI. So, I mean, that's pretty good indication it's the right guy. And I think some of that's really curious, that like we just don't know yet, if we ever will, exactly where the investigation went and what became of it. And, as long as we're on that, I'll go ahead and say too, and I always try to be mindful of that. I don't know what these people were doing. I don't know who they are. Were they hiding from things they'd done in another country? I don't know. And I'm always kind of aware that they may have descendants. This may be someone's grandfather, someone's father. And occasionally I get contacted by people that are the descendants of people I write about, and they'll ask me, did you ever get that FOIA request that you mentioned in this one article, and things like that. And so I try to be mindful of that too, that while they can seem like characters in a movie or something, these were at one point living, breathing people that the FBI was just following around,
Right. Yeah, and the FBI followed a lot of people around, so
they absolutely did. That became apparent to me too, following the files of people like different people at Harvard, the astronomers and the Ivy League astronomers, that part of being involved in classified projects meant that you spent your life under surveillance, that not only did you get checked out to make sure you're a good security risk, you're going to continue to get checked out to make sure you remain one. And yeah, people, like I say, these Ivy League professors, they end up with just hundreds of pages of FBI files that just, span 30 years. Menzel, Shapley, of, just ongoing, go check him out every now and then for the White House or for this, or he's been asked to be on this project or that project, and just pretty much never ending service like that. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it sounds to me like this Stark character maybe knew he was being shadowed, because it seemed to, but it's kind of wild because he could be anything from like a valiant Thor type to just a serial bigamist that thinks he's being followed by private investigators or something.
Yeah, burn after reading kind of thing. That, yeah, I was working with someone once on UFO stuff that became convinced that they were under surveillance. And I respected this person and their judgment. And one of the reasons I respected them was that what they did about this was go see an attorney and ask them, tell the attorney why I think I might be under surveillance. This happened, that happened, the other happened. And, what are my options about it? And the attorney asked them some things about some family members and distant family members, and knew a checklist of scenarios to go down that a layperson in the UFO community that's not a legal expert wouldn't know to do. Mm-hmm. And it became apparent that there were some reasons that were much more likely they might be under surveillance than they happen to be interested in UFOs and be working on something with me and go to a conference every now and then. In fact, the attorney told them, given that one of the scenarios they told them that a family member had gotten involved in, they told them, I could guarantee you that you're going to be monitored until they resolve this with your family member. And they actually felt better, like knowing mm-hmm. that and like understanding what was probably going on. And I respected that. Yeah, if you really think that car on the street is looking at you and all, yeah, you would rationally do something about it in some scenarios, rather than just, build mystery and, mm-hmm. like how we see at these conferences, or, that they'll actually discourage you from going to outside professionals,
Right. Yeah. Because that's how they wrangle you in. Yeah.
But yeah, that comes to mind, that there's a lot of reasons people might get, like you're saying, private detectives and whatnot, local law enforcement investigations, a lot of reasons people might have had their phones tapped in the 90s, or had someone follow them around the strip mall to see what they're doing, that UFOs would not be at the top of the list, even though that might be the first thing the person's thinking of.
Yeah. So, have you been able to find any writings by Stark? You mentioned, I saw in one of the blog posts that you wrote that he had tried to get published in Daniel Fry's Understanding newsletter, but it seems like they didn't end up printing it. Do we have any copies of his writings?
That's a great question. The FBI was interested in finding it and couldn't. And I got the answer to your question is I don't have them yet, no. But I did get the titles of them in the records I just got on Lois Jessup, that probably over the weekend, next week at the latest, I'm hoping to share with everybody. And what's really interesting, as an aside, just of how the process works, one of the files, PDFs I got that's responsive to Lois Jessup was also responsive to Daniel Fry. And when I did a request on Fry, I got this same document, but it was heavily redacted, and I appealed it, and I haven't gotten a response back yet on the appeal. The same document I got on Lois Jessup, it has much less redactions in it, including giving us the names of several articles that Stark allegedly wrote. And I just a couple nights ago, I was putting those on a Word program so that I can start trying to find them. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Uh, so I don't have them yet, but we can start trying to look for them if they ever got published. A letter that the FBI got a hold of from Fry to Stark says that Fry wanted to publish them, but of course that doesn't mean that he did or that they ever came to an agreement either. Doesn't mean he used the name Stark. I've come across at least one pen name he used along with aliases he used. So it was a lot easier to hide in those days than when they can just check our credit card number and see where we've been for the last 10 years, Yeah.
Right. That's for sure. Yeah, I mean, it seems like he probably was leading multiple lives at the same time. So you would expect that he'd write under a different name, but Fry's newsletter was kind of one of the big ones for the contactees at the time. It had he was one of the more popular voices during that era. So it would have been good distribution anyway.
You start to wonder, is he like trying to put coded messages in something that he knows will get a wide distribution? Is he trying to put subversive stuff? Like some of it's clearly subversive about, like I can't remember off the top of my head, but just my emotional memory is like, demand that they stop lying to you about UFOs. And, like it's certainly planting seeds about, the federal government is lying to you. And, they do. And, yet that's also a talking point of foreign adversaries that are going to point that out.
Yeah, that's for sure. And I mean, like, it's not entirely off the mark to say that there was subversive and un-American stuff in the contactee world, because one of the other files that you've uncovered, more related to Bethlehem, but also George Hunt Williamson, was they started to notice, like, hey, these guys are kind of palling around with William Dudley Pelley. We know that name,
Yeah, I mean, I pretty much have a working theory at this point. I'm sure it's not original by any stretch of the imagination, but I pretty much at this point think that the reason Pelley got interested in really jumping on the esoteric and paranormal and alien stuff with both feet was because a condition of his parole was that he couldn't distribute material about fascism and Nazis and stuff anymore. So he couldn't do any kind of political activism, was a condition of his parole. He was, convicted of sedition. And so it seemed pretty clear to me that he could just say it's aliens that are, they look like Aryans and they're mentally superior and they're spiritually superior. And we need to follow these alien teachings. And like you're saying, and like Nick Redfern and others have written about, these alien teachings were often about do away with the weapons, get rid of the nuclear arms, disarm, be open, declassify documents, things that would be an adversary's agenda. Yet, it's kind of psychotic too that you're thinking So peace activists are the enemy.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and then you have the marriage of, the hippies and the right wingers, because their common denominator is distrust of the government. But yeah, it definitely all ventures into Pelly and the silver shirts and not everybody, but there has always been a percentage of people in the UFO field that seemed like they were looking for a crowd that was easy to convince of something.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think, especially if it's been outlined to somebody like Pelly that they're not allowed to outwardly promote propagandistic ideas about fascism, and that they might go, okay, well, I'll just move it into a more esoteric philosophical realm, and secure the hearts and minds of these marks over here that are looking for flying saucers.
Yeah, and then you see that the guys that were working with Pelly, like Hunt Williamson, uh, um, they're showing up at the contactee events, and so is Kehoe, that's
Mm,
claiming to not want to have anything to do with these outlandish contactees, but there he is on the speakers list with them. And yeah, I just start to wonder about that, like, so where'd the travel expenses and the speaker stipend and all of that come from for this event, that we have documents that some of these people, Bethram, was promoted by people that worked for Pelly,
mhm.
and so it seems like reasonable speculation that some of the others may have been too. Like, I don't want to go off the deep end here, but I mean, a lot of questions could be raised about Kehoe and his alliances and political leanings, and that just doesn't seem to be something that the UFO crowd likes to give a lot of attention to.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, that's one of the harder things to discern when you're looking at history, is people's motivations and intent. You can never really know. I mean, even for people that are currently with us, it's hard to know. You can directly ask them, but
That's
people
a
that are blocked.
great point. That's a
Yeah.
great point. One of my pet peeves is when I'll see, especially if I see it in an article, but even in a post on social media, if somebody will say, well, such and such believes that yada, 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 I'll think, you don't know what they believe. You just know what they said they believe,
Right.
like,
Yeah.
yeah. And you can quote what they said. You can document what they do, but no, you don't know what they're thinking. You do
Right.
not.
Well, see, this is exactly one of the things I think that we're definitely aligned on is people like to make a lot of assumptions, and I feel like you definitely have it in you to pump the brakes and look at different angles and say, um, wait, we can't assume what they were thinking, but evidence points to this, but there's also this and this and this. Things are very nuanced, and a lot of people like to really jump to conclusions, or just take for granted that somebody else's opinion about something is it's already a settled, something about their personality has already been settled for us, so um I do appreciate that, though, because like I I feel like that wasn't a very elegant way of saying it, but that for me on my part, but I feel that way about everybody that I look at, where it's uh I'd like to know what was going on in their head, but I'm never going to. The best I can do is read all the things they said, read other people's opinions about them, and if you're going to write about it, present it as much of it as you can, and kind of let the reader decide. You know, you get you. I feel like you need to give your readers a little bit of the benefit of the doubt that they'll come to their own conclusions.
I agree with that, and thank you. I appreciate your assessment. I try. I'm certainly not above getting caught up and, wanting to see things the way that'll confirm my suspicions and theories. And it cuts both ways. Like the same way that we'd say we don't know, that this guy is really as credulous as he pretends to be. It can cut the other way too, that like back to Kehoe, his real talent, from the best as I can tell, was public relations. That's what he was good at. He built NICAP up with a lot of members. He got on well-known TV shows. He had been the tour manager for the famous Navigator.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what he was good at. Yet, while he talked a really good game and did a lot of lobbying in Washington, some of it successfully, at the basic point, what he was doing was soliciting intelligence officers to give him classified information.
Mm-hmm.
And I can certainly understand where a UFO person would look at that and say, but people should leak UFO stories. People should get that out in the public. Yet I can also understand how the FBI and the CIA and the U.S. Air Force Office of Special Investigations may have looked at it like, whether you're sincerely this gullible or not, either way, like it really doesn't matter to them what you're thinking and what your intention is. Mm. Like maybe someone isn't, like maybe they are so indoctrinated with the alien thing that they really don't believe in their heart of hearts that a person may have seen an exotic aircraft, or that a person may have seen technology that they're not supposed to be talking about, that they witnessed at an Air Force base or during a flight. And maybe they really don't know that. But either way, by encouraging them to get you that evidence and leak that evidence, it does become the intelligence agency's job to tell you to F and cease and desist,
Right.
Whatever their level of intellect or credulousness may or may not be.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I mean, one thing that's always fascinated me in this, and especially since I've put myself forward on the internet as somebody that wants to talk about UFOs or any of this stuff, is people's emotional investment in a lot of this, and people do kind of let their emotions take over with some of it, which I think is fascinating. I had somebody that I just would casually comment back and forth to on Twitter, just unload on me one day, and ended up blocking me just because I was saying that the whole Eisenhower meeting aliens at Air Force Base thing was like a really old hoax that's been around forever, and he was so invested in this myth that like he was saying, "Oh, you sound like one of those debunkers now,"
Yeah.
And more
Yeah.
recently, I had done an episode about like 80s ufology, and we were just we were dunking on the UFO cover up live thing, and I had somebody on leaving comments on the YouTube video being like, so like you guys are all skeptics now? What? We don't believe in UFOs anymore? I'm like, no, I don't believe in UFO disinfo. That's
Yeah.
different than UFOs. But the emotional part of it is powerful. It's kind of crazy. It overrides people's ability to think critically about it at all.
Yeah. You remind me of a conversation I was in recently about media literacy. And like, it's one thing to debate the substance of an issue,
Mm,
an article. Do you believe in this? Do you not believe it? Do you think it's feasible? That's one thing. And then it's another thing to say, I can develop the skills, or I can use my skills I have developed to look at this so-called news special, or to go through this article line by line, and I can see whether they've given me the information I need to make a decision,
mhm.
to have an informed opinion. And that's altogether different than arguing about the topic itself. Is the structure of the article. Does it cite its sources? Does it say where it got this information? Does it just say, the Washington Post has learned, and then takes off on 12 paragraphs that you don't even know where it came from? A lot of the time, yeah, that's what it
Yeah,
does, you
exactly.
know? And AP, with me, I think the UFO stuff, the paranormal stuff, the experiences, I think it comes down to, if I'm telling my story and I want your support with my story, here's what I remember, here's what I think happened, best of my ability. I have a certain responsibility to tell you, I just want emotional support with thinking about this and going through it. But if I want to share a story with you and I expect your acceptance of it as fact, that's just unreasonable. I
Yeah,
mean, you can't. And um there's our narrative, there's our identity, there's what we relate to. I know that people that are into the paranormal and the esoteric identify with that, and large amounts of our identities can be on these different milestones of experiences in our life. And that's fine to be taken that way. The challenge, when we start presenting to someone that we want them to accept our interpretation as an objective reality, is that they should be allowed to investigate. They should be able to then start asking questions and wanting documentation. And that's just not cool to dissect someone's experience in life like that. And from when I was on the experiencer side of the desk with it, I also discovered that something that's not cool about it is it's not just my story a lot of the
mhm.
time. that if I start getting on the radio or whatever talking about something that happened 45 years ago when half a dozen people were around, and I want that accepted as objective reality, well, then the people listening have a right to ask me who were those half a dozen people, and can I talk to them, and can I this, and can I that, and what was the date, and what was the town, and all. And if you don't want to go there, then don't go there. You
Yeah.
know, I mean, you don't have the authority to involve everybody else in that process that may or may not want to be in it. So there's a lot of emotional stuff that goes with it. And yeah, I think we do have responsibilities to identify whether we're looking for emotional support or whether we want objective investigation about an event. And they're completely different areas of expertise. They're different support systems, and that, you know, there's just I mean, we could talk for hours about that alone.
Yeah, for sure. Um, but I mean, it's kind of analogous to what you were saying about media literacy, because if you're inclined to believe in one narrative or another anyway, and you're reading an article, um, a lot of them are intentionally written so that you'll fill in the blanks with X, Y, or Z to come to a conclusion. But sometimes not. But either way, you will, because if you want, if you're looking at it wanting to read it one way, then you're going to read it that way.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I think the work that you were doing with yet another aspect of expanding frontiers is media literacy, and a series called Learning to Learn, which what I thought was really cool. You had a couple different people involved on that one, which I think is sorely needed in our world today.
Well, thank you. Yeah, those are public service videos that are freely offered at the EFR Patreon, the Expanding Frontiers Research Patreon. Yeah, I did relatively short and concise, like half-hour interviews with people with qualified opinions and qualified experts on how we go about separating the signal from the noise, and how we learn about the things that matter the most to us without getting bogged down in all of this other stuff. And yeah, Vanessa Valilko was helpful. She was willing to be interviewed. Sean Beadle, Sarah Scholes, Aaron Gullius, and then Erica Lukes and I reviewed it. And I've often thought about that's something I could like revisit annually and do 4 more or something like that, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's a great idea. I mean, it seems that our public education system doesn't support the kind of critical thinking and media literacy that it ought to, and I think the technology has eclipsed educators' ability to keep up with. So um, I think it's a valuable resource for a lot of people. Yeah.
I hope so. I appreciate you bringing that up. We try to provide, you know, useful, meaningful content, and it's rewarding to do. I enjoy doing it.
Yeah, yeah, and I appreciate that it's there. Um, Now, going back to what you were saying earlier, and I can cut this out if you don't want to talk about it, but you said looking at it from the experiencer side, you've had your own experiences, and are you comfortable talking about it at all?
I'm comfortable enough talking about it. Yes, thank you for asking. I think that most of us get involved in this subject, a high percentage of people, because it's of interest and it's often of interest from a personal perspective. And when I came into it, I was what I would, in hindsight, call more of a John Keel perspective of I was kind of a counterculturist at heart. I believe I still am. I'm just kind of an old hippie that doesn't look like a hippie and doesn't do the things I did when I was 25 years old anymore. But I think that's what brings a lot of us here. And it's kind of an anti-science. I think Keel kind of wrote with that bunch of stuffed shirts that are afraid to look at the truth and don't want to see their paradigm shift and all of their papers be shown to be wrong. And I came to feel like that while I still appreciate Keel and I still respect Keel, and I'm just using him because he's kind of a benchmark, which is another shout out, really.
Yeah.
I came to think that that's kind of a lazy man's way of looking at it all. That there's also a lot of truth in the works of Dr. Julia Shaw and historians and people that bothered to get college degrees and put their research in systematic, professional ways that they present it. But yeah, when I came to the genre, that was why. I had a UFO sighting as a child. I was interested enough in the truth of it to really try to get it under a glass. And in hindsight now, because of like the things I've learned about human memory and looking back at things, I pretty much at this point have to accept that I don't know what happened. And I can't really separate thinking about what happened from what happened. And it's been 50 years, man, literally 50 years. So like, do you think that I could tell you the difference between what happened when I was 11 years old one Christmas morning and just a mental projection of what Christmas when I was 11 years old was probably like? Yeah. No, I could not. And so, and again, part of my interest in that sighting and the things it brought up was, well, what can I learn from other family members about it? What can I learn about the area I lived in and things like that? And it can just become a jumble, and we kind of go down this Richard Dreyfuss. I'm, making a reference to Close Encounters of the Third kind of obsession that often doesn't lead anywhere healthy. And give John Keel credit for that. He warned of that too, that he said he's seen many a person end up a babbling idiot that, kept scratching and clawing. And I do feel good now that I'm okay with the ambiguity. I don't know what happened. It may have been nothing. It may have just been misidentifications. It may have been, who knows, shamanic journey. Who knows?
Yeah.
But there are, I think a big part of the point, AP, is there are people that if you'll let them will pull you towards a conclusion that makes them feel better about themselves. And that's probably my biggest concern about the UFO community, is that it has a way of welcoming emotionally vulnerable people that don't find acceptance with their stories other places. They don't have other places to share them. They might find a UFO meeting, a regional meeting, to work better for them than a therapist or a 12-step group or something along those lines that would also be helpful. And then once they're in that, they're rewarded, whether it's consciously and intentionally or not. They're rewarded by the group and the facilitators by building the narrative and sticking with the narrative. And they're going to lose that support and that emotional attachment, that emotional acceptance. Like you say, when you say, well, I don't know that Eisenhower thing. Oh, I better shut up about that. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. This guy's unloading on me about it. It means a lot to him that that's true.
Yeah.
Yeah. No. And there are a lot of vulnerable people out there that have experienced something. Right. And I think that the support for them should be above the exploitation or the even if it's not intentional exploitation, but people love to use other people's experiences to bolster their point. And if it means omitting facts, if it means finagling some facts and changing them so that it fits the narrative better, then they'll do that. And it sucks for the person that had the experience because they were just looking for acceptance somewhere, you know. So.
Yeah, and they a lot of the times they mean well, the same way that I would say a really high percentage of UFO reports and reports of alleged abductions, I don't think the vast majority are intentional deception. I don't think the vast majority are what they seem to be, but I don't think people are being intentionally deceptive. But in that same way, the people that facilitate these UFO groups and meetings, even investigation of UFOs sometimes at some organizations, they mean well and just don't even realize how they're just stomping all over reasonable protocols. And
yeah,
like I remember Mark O'Connell, you know, he's a talented writer and thoughtful commentator in the UFO genre. And I remember years ago reading one of his blog posts about a woman at an organization that just everything was an orb, you know, like everybody she got assigned to, they were seeing orbs, you know, and it was like, I got the idea from reading his blog post that she legitimately believed that, but I mean, that's potentially harmful to people, and it's certainly not helpful. And what can you, I mean, we have like entire organizations of people saying, you know, give us your $50, get your training manual, and we'll give you names and numbers to go interview about the UFO they saw. And God only knows what all happens after that, man.
Oh, I mean, and we have robots now that are doing it so people don't have to. I mean, there was an article in Futurism that I was reading recently about an AI. Somebody became fascinated with their AI conversations, and it fed into their psychosis, where they were out in the desert, like trying to get the aliens to come pick them up, and it like destroyed the guy's life. Like he had a successful business and a marriage, and it all fell apart, you know.
I saw that one, and it even told him that his faith in the AI was what opened the experience to his
Right.
reality. I
Yeah.
read that. Yeah.
Yeah. And somebody had, when I shared it online, somebody had commented like, this is straight out of like the cult, how to make a cult manual, you know? And I'm like, yeah,
Absolutely.
we streamlined the process with technology. Like, way to go.
Absolutely. When I was writing The Graves Had Been Framed, or I guess researching what became writing it, AP, it was so creepy to have the people like Emma Woods tell me the things that were coming out of the David Jacobs camp of, you can't go to the police, you can't go to a therapist, they won't believe you, they'll call the authorities on you, they'll have you
Mm,
Baker acted. There was no one but David Jacobs and his entourage that you can rely on. And that was one of the things I thought of when I was reading about Guantanamo Bay and how those uh, consultants, psychologist consultants that developed the enhanced interrogation techniques, torture, were aiming for what they called learned helplessness, learned
yeah.
helplessness. And I thought that's absolutely it, that nobody else can help you, nobody can do anything but me. And don't
Yeah.
even tell any, and don't tell anybody you're telling me this. And like,
Right.
oh my God, that's just so sick.
Yeah, and I think there's a prominent UFO person that, or a UAP person that was involved with those types of interrogation techniques, but his name's not coming to mind right now.
Right. That's absolutely right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that famous UFO person that can for now remain nameless. That's another good example of guys that we're supposed to think just um, decided that UFO stuff looks fun. I think I'm going to go do that a while. Yeah.
Mm, yeah. Yeah. Have you seen that Age of Disclosure movie that, or the documentary that had just come out?
I have not, AP. Did you watch
No,
it?
no. I think I would need to be paid handsomely to sit through that.
Yeah, I feel like there are things I want to learn about just to observe it, like the FBI records that I can so enthusiastically just take off on a tangent and talk for a half hour without coming up for air. Or then on the other hand, there's stuff that, like, okay, I think I'm thoroughly convinced that's just like a bad scene and is like passing the spoiled milk around saying, oh, this is spoiled. Here, taste it. Like,
Right.
no, I got it, man. That's spoiled. I believe you,
Right.
How, right. Like, how many, like, this journal asked me to do a review on one of those Pentagon Skinwalker Ranch books.
Werewolf
And
at the Pentagon or whatever.
yeah, one
Yeah.
of the three or whatever it was. And I told them up front, if you'll provide the book and you want me to do it, but like if this changes your mind and you want to withdraw the invitation, it's okay. That I can tell you I do not envision a scenario that I would read this book otherwise. And
Yeah.
I am like really confident that I'm going to be extremely critical of what's in it. And they were like, no, that's cool if that's what you want to do. But yeah, it's like that. It's like how thorough do I want to take notes? I mean, I'm sure I can point out something on every damn page of the book that's just a an irrational logical fallacy,
Right.
And
Yeah.
and I'm no, intellectual heavyweight. I mean, I don't have a degree. I didn't graduate from any college, but I can like read the list of logical fallacies, look at a George Knapp article and go, man, this is just meaningless.
Yeah.
Somebody said stuff,
Yeah. Yeah. No, I hear you. And it's like sometimes you really have to kind of uh, bring people around one person at a time, because just like I had that one person flip out at me about the Eisenhower thing, I had another one that was very excited about a pull quote from what's his face, Eric Davis, the guy that's a CIA advisor, science guy, um, about uh, a presentation he did on UFO crash retrievals. And it's like, oh, this article says aliens are real. And I'm like, no, it doesn't. And they're like, well, it says that they retrieved alien craft. And I'm like, no, it doesn't. It said he did a presentation about UFO craft retrieval. Like, that could be a hypothetical craft retrievals. That could be protocols for what you would do in case this ever happened, you know? It could be about unverified stories about those in a presentation. It's like the article is leading you to believe, and he is leading you to believe by what he told you, the journalist, in the language he's using, that he has knowledge of alien life aboard craft from retrievals, but he didn't actually say that, right? So he didn't have to.
That's a
Yeah,
great example of how you just need to go line by line and say, I know what this makes me think it just verified, but did it really verify it? That's another thing I actually came to enjoy about reading the FBI files is sometimes they're difficult to read because they're not set up like a magazine. They don't have cool pictures. They don't have subtitles that let you know when something important's coming. They're often just walls of text.
yeah,
But one of the cool things about it is you do get that kind of like, throwback to Dragnet, the just the facts, ma'am kind of
right.
thing. It's like, okay, boss, you said go talk to this guy. Here's what he said. And
Yeah,
I'm just putting it in the memo. There you go. And yeah, you do have to be mindful of this isn't the FBI saying this is true. This isn't documentation that happened. This is documentation. Someone said this during an interview on the date of this memo. Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So that's all super important stuff to consider, and I mean, a lot of the post 2017 UAP language has been almost exclusively designed to lead people to assumptions. I think. I
Yeah.
mean, more
And
than ever before in the UFO world, it seems catered to a certain kind of person just buying into it whole hog, you know?
yeah, it does. And like you mentioned earlier, it often in one outlet or another, it can seem designed to do that on purpose. That like if you've read something like three times, like three or four lines, like three times, and you're still going, now what does that say? Who said what now? And you're
Right.
still trying to like get it in your head that, okay, so the taxi driver said he had a fare that said he knew somebody that had said,
Right.
like you gotta like read it like a bunch of times to like get this straight
Yeah.
about. So it's not even Eric Davis, it's not the admiral, it's somebody they were talking about that said, and it's like, oh my god, what am I even like? Just stop even clicking on this crap. You know?
Yeah.
There's actual FOIA records to be read.
Yeah, and it does, it's kind of like it becomes like a cult mentality. And I found that really disturbing on UFO Twitter. Is like there actually seems to be like what I was calling like the cult of Elizondo, where he's like a messianic figure for some of these people.
Yeah, I think it got kind of dangerous.
Yeah,
I mean, some of those people were pretty indoctrinated and radicalized, if you ask me, you
yeah.
know?
Oh, I agree. Yeah. Um, this is something you had mentioned Sarah Scholes earlier. I had talked to her about it at one point. I think she was working on another book, wasn't she? I don't know if that stopped happening, but
I'm sure she's working on a project. I don't know which one, but I'm confident she is.
yeah. Well, we can't speak for her. I should track her down and get her on the show, and then I can ask her myself. But on the topic of cults, this is something I found interesting because it's not anything I ever really looked into before. But you were looking into the Ramtha Jay-Z Knight stuff on the blog fairly recently. Um,
Yeah. Oh my gosh. One day Erica says, "Hey, have you ever done any requests on Jay-Z Night?" And I'm like, "Oh yeah, that woman that was like one of the MUFON big spenders and all." And so I looked it over and I thought, okay, one of the things with doing the FBI is pretty much my go to agency. And then I'll branch out to local law enforcement or other federal agencies. And one of the things about FOIAing the FBI is the person has to be deceased or it's an invasion of privacy. They
yeah,
won't release records on a person that's alive. And so since Jay-Z is alive, I one of the things I've learned to do is let's FOIA a company. We'll ask Ramtha School of Enlightenment. That'll
yeah,
be our FOIA request. And the FBI only gave us a couple of responsive pages, but it was involved a memo where they had been in touch with the Thurston County, Washington Sheriff's Office because someone had asked them about, is this Ramtha stuff cool? What's going on with this Ramtha stuff? So they reached out to the sheriff's office, and this memo documented that the sheriff told the FBI they're aware of Ramtha, that they're well aware of that bit. So Erica and I were like, how aware? So we sent a public records request to the sheriff's office, and God bless them. For about 18 months, they kept sending us intermittent releases, periodically giving us more files. We ended up with hundreds and hundreds of arrest reports, documents, witness statements, video recordings, audio recordings of police interactions responsive to, for one reason or another, Ramtha School of Enlightenment. And I did some blog posts about it, and we set up a searchable database that's in the online archive at expandingfrontiersresearch.org. And one of the things that arose during that is what I was recently on about that you're referencing is I came across in those records a reference to a letter that had been written by a doctor to the Thurston County Public Health Department, alerting them of concerns he had about activities at Ramtha School. And so then I did a FOIA request more recently to the health department. They referred it to the prosecutor's office, and God bless them again. I mean, whatever people want to say about Thurston County, Washington, they've got their act together on the public records request.
Yeah.
They have been providing me with now 2 releases, including the letter that was sent from the doctor that was concerned about alcohol consumption and malnutrition and things like that among Ramtha followers. And if I recall correctly, and I'm going to be adding this to the database that we've set up. And the latest release involves more photos of activities that were brought to the prosecutor's attention, concerns about drug use, about minors being involved in these activities. And then there's various other administrative things that were brought to the prosecutor's attention, like Ramtha needed to get some engineers to work on their sewer systems and wells to be in compliance with county code. Stuff like that comes up as well. But to the best of my knowledge, in spite of the fact we've gotten records where her followers and Jay-Z Knight were even implicated in murder investigations over the years, to the best of my knowledge, she has successfully defended herself from all civil lawsuits, all criminal lawsuits, and pretty much never had anything come of it that I know of. Now, how much internally it affected her quality of life, that's like we were saying, I can't tell you what somebody's thinking.
Yeah.
But she's certainly been controversial, and a lot of stuff, a lot has happened up there. I mean, they were preppers that were building underground places to live when whatever went down. They were hoarding materials, valuables that made them targets of crime.
Yeah.
As one detective wrote in a memo where he was giving a case report or a status update on a case, he wrote that what we have here, and I'm paraphrasing, is well-to-do people move in near people that aren't well-to-do, and they don't even use banks. They just like keep everything in a trailer, and they get killed, and yeah.
It's sounds like a whole dark story that we're only get a little bit of, and it seems like she, for the most part, gets away with all kinds of stuff.
I'll tell you, AP, I don't think the most of it will ever come out. It's so deep, it's so dark, it's so strange, it's so protected. There's so many layers. And yeah, it does have this foreboding energy, for lack of a better feel about it too, that like, if I don't have to dig a lot in that, I think I might be more mentally healthy just to, here's the records if a researcher ever wants it, knock yourself out. One thing that I found particularly interesting, for example, that's sometimes it's just a single reference and you don't find anything more about it, but they had an email complaint to the sheriff's office once about open mail that someone in Ramtha's circles was complaining about that her mail was being taken, and she had had some correspondence with the FBI, and one of those letters was open, and then it just like wraps it up by law enforcement says they interviewed her and talked to her, and she's supposed to like figure out if she wants to file charges or see if the landlord's going to give her her mail or what's going on. And I was really curious about, like, for something like that, I'd just like to know, what was she corresponding with the FBI about? Did like Ramtha have her doing FOIA requests, or I don't know. I don't want to speculate. I mean, I can think of a lot of reasons that it's nothing nefarious, or it's nothing, not like if you're undercover, you're not going to call the sheriff and tell him, one wouldn't think. But it just seemed odd. I thought, like, there's obviously a story there, and I don't know what it is. However simple it may or may not be, it's not just my mail's been open, it's my mail with the FBI is getting opened.
Yeah. And wasn't there a story? I'm going to get this wrong right now because I read it the other day, but that somebody at Ramtha had complained about radio signals blocking the reception of the messages from the alien intelligences.
That's it essentially. One of in these records we're getting that were given to the prosecutor's office, the health department was discussing in emails how they should address increasing public concern about signals from radio towers and cell towers. And for a while there was that's how they're coming for us, mind control. They're taking over the 4G, 5G, whatever the QAnon thing was that was going around. I wasn't up on all that, but I got the gist of it, that cell towers are the thing. And they were discussing in their emails, do we need to do a statement on this, or is it, like worse to even address it, or what do we do, guys? People are calling. And one of the people involved in this email chain said that he was the former executive director of the State Board of Health, is why he was in their email chain. And he said that one time that like it can get crazy, that he said one time at an open forum that they held for the public, Ramtha followers came and complained that something needed to be done about cell towers. And not only did they cause cancer, but like you said, the cell tower signal is jamming up Ramtha's signal, and Jay-Z Knight's having trouble picking it up because of the cell tower.
What a shame.
And to his credit, he was just the facts man. He was just alerting the group of, this is what they said, I did not conduct a thorough investigation.
Well, how would one do that? We don't understand how to contact Ramtha or how that energy works between Ramtha and Jay-Z Knight. Only Jay-Z Knight knows that.
But apparently, if he was near a T-Mobile flip phone, it would have jammed it up, I guess.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I don't know. Yeah. Well, one of the most interesting things about that, or something I definitely didn't know, was the Z stands for zebra. What a name.
Yeah, what was she like Judith Darlene Hampton, I think, and then she said Judy Zebra Night would work better for me.
Right. Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
Judy Zebra.
Wow. Have you uncovered any evidence that she's related to Art Bell in any way? I've heard rumors that she was Art Bell's cousin.
I have heard whispers. I do not know. Something that I regularly do is reach out to people when I write about them.
Yeah.
And she's no different. I reached out a few times to email addresses I could get on her or her organization and her spokespeople, and none of them ever expressed any interest in replying to me. Sometimes that I think it's the right thing to do. I think it can kind of take your writing, a step further. Like instead of just writing about David Jacobs, let's tell him I'm going to be in Eureka Springs. Can I get 20 minutes?
Yeah. Yeah.
I think it takes it to another level. I don't make a lot of friends that way, though. I'll
Right.
tell you that. I have some people that appreciate what I do, and the old adage is certainly true that truth stands up to scrutiny. I mean, people like Sarah Scholes never have any problem having me bounce a few questions off her about her book or her article.
Mhm.
Vanessa Valilko doesn't have any problem with me asking her some questions about the work she did in college and things like that. Um, Brandon Fugel, not a big fan of Jack Brewer inquiries. So just take that for what you make of it.
Yeah, and I mean, my understanding is that the interactions with Jacobs were pretty contentious.
They were. We reached a point that he asked me to turn my recorder off, and I complied. I mean, I'm
Mm,
not gonna. Um, I'll tell you too. John Alexander is the only person that ever agreed to let me interview them that then reneged. And then when I pushed it and said because I was like, come on, you agreed to let me talk to you. Can I turn my recorder on? He's the only person I've ever asked, can I turn on my recorder, that didn't give me permission to turn on the recorder.
mm,
Um, and he didn't say, no, you can't, but he said, what do you want to turn it on for?
yeah,
And I mean, obviously, to get it straight, like to know what you said, to have a record of what I asked you and what you said. And like if you don't want there to be a record of that, I think that kind of speaks to the whole process, doesn't it? You know.
yeah, right. That kind of says it all. Yeah.
Right, like sure, AP, I'll talk to you an hour or two, but like you're not going to record it or anything, are you? Well, what the hell point then?
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, there's something to be said for private conversation, but clearly, if you're interviewing somebody, that's not the point. Especially if you're going to be writing about it later or publishing it in some way. Like, uh,
And somewhat in his defense, to be totally fair, I was more conspiratorial at that point in my writing than I am today. I feel like I've had some good mentors about how you can pursue things that are interesting to you without having to accuse people of things, like
mhm,
the facts, like we were talking about, and let it speak for itself. I got criticized pretty good one time by a blogger that, my first emotional response was to um, write a rebuttal and criticize some of their criticism. And then I thought, just think about it. And if you still want to later, okay. But maybe some of the criticisms correct. Like maybe they are going a little over the top. Like I didn't really say this, that they're like they were giving me some straw men, but I thought, but the gist of what they're saying, yeah, I am suggesting what they're criticizing me for suggesting. So am I splitting hairs by saying, but I didn't come right out and said it. I was careful with my wording to not say it while I implied it. And I thought it was the right thing to do, to give that some thought. Maybe I should think about that. If I'm not willing to come right out and say something, then maybe I should find a topic I am willing to make a definitive point about, and not throw it back at the person that was criticizing me for it. So I think there's something to be said for that. But yeah, I mean, with John Alexander, I mean, no, we're just not going to be able to work this out. He did let me talk to him for a couple of minutes, and probably the main thing I got from that interaction was I asked him, how is it possible that you could have worked with General Stubblebine for so many years? And he says one set of things, you say another set. And like tongue in cheek, I would say, let me introduce y'all to each other so you can figure out what the hell really happened. How can you have such conflicting narratives? And he said something that I thought really made a lot of sense, was Stubblebine was my boss, and I don't know why he says the things he says. And I thought, I'd believe that. I think I could believe that to a certain extent. But see, that's what I think made John Alexander a professional as compared to just your garden variety UFO loan that's running from one UFO conference to the next on the speaker circuit. He was really good at throwing just the most batshit crazy thing into the mix you've ever heard, after he's been talking for 20 minutes about some of the most sound, rational stuff like that just makes complete sense. And now he's going to tell me they got people in Central America that are hovering 3 feet off the ground, and all they got to do is take ayahuasca to float around the treetops, and or whatever it was he was going on about. But my point being that, I think he was a professional disinformationalist, or whatever his purpose of being in the UFO community was that he could seem just as rational and down to earth and sincere as he could not. Like, no, you can't record what I'll tell you, but what do you want to know? And and then say something that makes complete sense. Like, he was my boss. What do you want me to tell you? How the hell should I know? And it had this feeling of that, like he's basically saying, look, dude, the benefits were good and the pay's all right. What the hell are you doing with your life?
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, it can be easy to forget that a lot of these people are also just people.
That's right.
Yeah. And like we said earlier, we can't possibly know people's motivations, but sometimes it just boils down to something as simple as, oh, man's got to work. You got to, who's got to put
Yeah,
a
and
roof over your head, you know?
AP, I think that was part of the process. My interactions with him, I've been a big fan over the years of Sharon Weinberger. I think she does good work. And one of the things I feel like I've picked up from her work is keep a lot of sunshine on things, keep it above the board.
Mm-hmm.
Everything's on the record, or like like you were saying about Sarah. I can't speak for Ms. Weinberger, obviously, but that's my interpretation from reading her work is that,
Yeah.
she goes to people on the record. And I found that since I started really noticing how people were doing it and paying attention to it, to really be helpful. That, like, if I reach out to somebody and I tell them I'm looking for a quote for a blog post, here's something that happened. What do you want to say anything about it? And they start wanting to say, well, I don't want you to write this, but well, then I don't need to know it. Don't share with a blogger something you don't want written. And I've come to identify that they're just trying to manipulate me emotionally sometimes with that too, like to earn sympathy that's not deserved and stuff like that. Like I don't want your don't tell anybody but stories. Just answer the question. Do you want to comment for a blog post for a book or not? And my point being, back to Alexander, don't be creeping around UFO conferences playing gotcha with intelligence officers. That's just not going anywhere.
Yeah. Yeah, they're professionals, like you said, like
Yeah.
they do that for a living, you know.
Yeah, like you can hold them accountable. You can say, why does Stubblebine say this? Why do you say that? What's your answer? But like you said earlier about getting emotionally invested, try to keep it impersonal. I'm just writing an article. If you want to say something for it, fine. If you don't, fine. I'm just pointing out that you and the people you worked with have a lot of inconsistencies with what you say you worked on,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we've been going for a little while now, and this has been a lot of fun. So, for listeners, this is Jack and I haven't actually spoken face to face, virtually this way before. We've been in contact before, so this has been a real blast. Actually being able to chat with you and go back and forth. Um, I think it's long overdue. So
It is overdue. It is, and I will keep in touch. And I really appreciate you having me. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So, for people that want to keep up with everything you're doing, the website is expandingfrontiersresearch.org.
That's it. And you
Yep.
can find all of our stuff from there. You can visit, you'll see a menu with our blog, and you'll see a link to our Patreon. And you can get to all of our stuff from expandingfrontiersresearch.org.
And you're on Blue Sky with that as well?
I am
Yeah.
Expanding Frontiers Research, and I have an account on there too, Jack Brewer.
Okay. Are you still adding to the UFO Trail blog, or do you?
I do not. I go by it every now and then to moderate comments that come and go. I haven't written there in a long time.
Okay.
I do the EFR blog. There is a lot of material though at the UFO Trail, that there is, of interviews and articles on intelligence officers and things like that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I've found it to be a really great resource over the years. So
Thank you.
I'm glad it's still up there. And then your books can be purchased pretty much on Amazon or yeah?
Yes, they are available on Amazon. The Grays have been framed and Wayward Signs.
All right, excellent. Well, thanks again, Jack. Thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you.